have so many questions. Show me the answers. I'm afraid. Why am I here? The sixth dimension. Should I cut his Welcome back, everyone, to An Ordinary Search for Truth. My name is Nate, and today I wanted to share with you 6 books that will radically change the way that you see yourself and the world, and that will ultimately help you be guided into and remain within your fundamental being, your cosmic source. So, without further ado, let's begin. Now, the first 3 books are actually by the same author. I'm sure you've heard of him, Adyashanti. These books go hand in hand with one another, and I'm going to show you how. So the first book that I would recommend reading is Adyashanti's The End of Your World, which is not a super thick book, but an absolutely essential read. If you are on the path towards enlightenment and want to understand what it actually means to become awakened, to be progressing towards enlightenment, and what life is like afterwards, this is a fantastic book to start with. He uses very simple language that I found very easy to understand, that I could look into my experience and relate to. He's a very gentle teacher, and you can feel the love and the peace coming out at you from the pages. It's really quite amazing. And so this book is just focused on, like I say, what is awakening? What is it like to become awakened, and what is required to do so? And then after you have an awakening experience or a realization of God or of yourself or truth, whatever you want to call it, after you have this realization, what do you do after that? You know, what is your life going to be like after that? And does it stay? You know, are there still things to work on afterwards? He goes into all of that and does an absolutely incredible job. Now, a couple of books that I would recommend pairing with this reading, also by Adyashanti. The Way of Liberation, a practical guide to spiritual enlightenment. Now, this is an incredibly skinny book, and as you can see, it is not a long read. I think there's only, let me see here, 50 pages, if that. It's a very quick, very short read. But what he does is he kind of takes the thicker material that he can write and condenses it down into just the absolutely most fundamental teachings. No frills, no fancy language. You know, he basically just boils it down to these are the absolute fundamentals that will help you achieve enlightenment. The kind of attitudes of being that you need to have to even begin the process. And so it's a wonderful book either to read before getting into the deeper material to provide some structure if you're not super familiar with it, or you could read afterwards to then kind of summarize and really pull out of the larger reading what is most important and what to really focus on. So where in this one, you get a very comprehensive, more dialogue style of read. This is very much like a textbook. Very straight to the point, very matter of fact. And then the last book that is by the same author that I would like to recommend is The Direct Way, 30 Practices to Evoke Awakening. So after you read the material and you kind of understand intellectually and maybe even emotionally what he's trying to say, what his message is, and what that could start to look like in your life, I recommend this book simply because it includes, like it says, 30 practices that you can use to achieve awakened states and remove limiting beliefs, to really get in tune with your own consciousness and your own being. And these practices are very, there's a variety of these types of practices. So when I read through it, I didn't connect with every single one. There were some that I still to this day haven't done. But there are others that absolutely changed my entire life and outlook. So it's a fantastic book to go through after you've read the content, to then very practically and in a very personalized way apply the teachings to your life, to actually have some things that you can do, some meditations that you can do, integrations that you can do that will help actualize your knowledge. Take it out of the mind and actually into your actions and into your very being. So this trifecta right here by Adyashanti, I highly recommend. It is life-changing. It changed mine and it could change yours. The next book that I would like to present to you, you've actually probably heard of, and if you're in any kind of spiritual spheres, have definitely heard of the author, of course, Eckhart. The Power of Now, A Guide to Spiritual Enlightenment. This book was one of the first that I actually read when I was starting to progress down my spiritual path. And the thing that I loved about it and still love about it is the way that he uses words to teach incredibly deep understandings and teachings. But he does so in a way that almost a child could understand. His language is so simple and so careful and precise, and doesn't really use a lot of new age spiritual terminology. He can very much meet you where you are in your understanding, even if you've never explored non-duality, if you've never explored even just spirituality in general. You can still pick up this book and read it, and it will still change your life. So this book works on a number of levels, with students who are advanced to students who are just beginning. And that's why I recommend this book, because not only does he so clearly and simply teach about the ego mind, the body, consciousness, being, surrender, all of these things he talks about without going into a bunch of mystical language or religious traditions. um, in fact, if you read up on his backstory, his enlightenment was actually not a super mystical experience where he was like meditating in a forest. It was in the depths of depression and despair that he received his enlightenment. So if you're wanting to get into spirituality, but you're just starting out, or you don't really understand a lot of the language or verbology that is used, I highly recommend this book as a great starter. This will just springboard you into very deep levels of understanding about the fundamental nature of yourself and the world. And I don't think I've ever come across someone that has done it in quite as simple a way as Eckhart does. The next book that I would like to recommend to you is The Science of Enlightenment, How Meditation Works. This is by Shinzen. Uh, the reason that I like this book is because there is a part of me that's very intellectual, very scientific. It might be surprising to you, but it's true. And that's very much where this book is kind of trying to come from. It's explaining some incredible principles of non-duality and consciousness and mind and world and what the substance of these things are, what they are fundamentally. He explains these things in a way that I think scientists and intellectuals would really connect with. Very matter of fact. He tries to be very objective and straightforward with it, almost like he's doing science and doing science with meditation and exploration of consciousness. So if you're coming from more of a scientific background, intellectual background, you like just the facts, ma'am, then this would be a wonderful book to start with, because of the way that he presents things. Uh, in fact, some of the exercises that he has in there, the thought experiments that he has in there, are almost uh, outlined like formulas, like mathematical formulas and scientific experiments. So if that's the way that your mind leans, a great book to go to. It will definitely help your mind wrap itself around a lot of concepts that are typically shrouded in a lot of mystery and mysticism and spiritual woo-woo that might turn you off, honestly, to a lot of these things. So he does a great job of opening the door for you guys. And then the last book that I would like to present to you is The Way Within, Your Path to Enlightenment. This is by James Capra. This book was actually very surprising to me because when I first started reading it, I didn't feel like it was coming from a super valid source, I guess, or that he wasn't very experienced or whatever in spirituality. But what I love about the book is that it's broken up into very digestible sections that flow very nicely into one another. And each section has something powerful to teach. And so you could potentially turn to any page and start reading and get sucked right into it. But what was very cool for me is that he had some practices and techniques in this book that were very unique and surprisingly powerful. He uses some very direct experience kind of practices of just kind of clear seeing, of matter of fact seeing, looking at your experience and seeing it for what it is. And he gives some wonderful techniques in how to help do that, to actually clear out some very powerful limiting beliefs and assumptions that our mind has created about its experience. And so this book I eventually found to be indispensable in alongside all of these other ones that I recommended. Uh, Simply because not only was it another take, another angle and perspective on it, but it contained things that were very unique that I did not encounter anywhere else. And he talks in a very warm way. You can feel the warmth of his words and his humility through the pages. And I came to love the way that he presented his material, even though at first, for some reason, I wasn't enjoying it. So definitely give this book a chance and really focus on the techniques that he uses in his book because they are quite unique and very powerful in connecting with your own being and consciousness and in clearing away the filters that the mind has built up in between you and your experience. Now, I know I said I was only going to share 6, and these are all essential, in my opinion, to connecting with being and getting a very comprehensive understanding of how to awaken, how to become enlightened. But one more book that I consider an honorable mention is this. And this book is called There's More to the Universe Than They Told You in School. And then in parentheses, somebody left something out. And this is it. This book is deceptively childlike. It's got little drawings. It's got very kind of cartoon writing. It's very short, very simple. And this book sat on my shelf for years, and I never picked it up once. Because in my mind I thought, this is an incredibly deep pursuit of spiritual enlightenment and realization, and I have to go to very thick books, very detailed intellectual sources to have these realizations. And then one day I just picked it up and read it, and I read the entire book in one sitting. And I can't explain how powerful this little book that seems like it could be a kid's book was. The way that it explains elements of our experience, elements of spirituality, and just the facts of our experience and what it's like to be a human being having this experience within a universe, and what does it all mean? These very childlike questioning. The way that it speaks is with just full of love and wonder and humor and magic. And so if you want something that will touch your heart and touch your soul and almost completely bypass your intellectual mind, this book will do it. And so even though it doesn't go quite as deeply into a lot of the concepts of consciousness and being and ego and all of this stuff, it does cut straight into the heart and give you a sense of love and magic and childlike wonderment that I found later on is absolutely essential to enlightenment and awakening. It's this returning to simplicity, this returning to this childlike state of not knowing, of vulnerability and surrender. So despite the power of these 6 books that I've just shown you, let's not forget that sometimes the simple things, the small things, can be just as life-changing and just as meaningful. So I recommend this book as well. The author is Jay Austen. So Jay Austen, There's More to the Universe Than They Told You in School. Great read for you. And if you have any kids, I would recommend reading it to them. I think that it would be a more profound experience than you think it might be. And this is a book that I would definitely read to my son when he's old enough for that. So thank you so much for watching. I highly encourage you to read these books, or even to just read one of them. Even just one will radically change your life. And if you read all of them, who knows, you could be the next Buddha. Who knows what could happen. But they changed my life and continue to change my life every time I open them. And I hope that they can do that for you. So thank you very much for watching and supporting my content. If you enjoy what I'm doing here, hit a subscribe and the bell to be notified for future videos as they're released. If you like this video, hit a like down below and comment if you have any questions on maybe where to find these books or more specifics about their contents. I'd be happy to share some more insight with you and go a bit more in depth. I have pulled out pages and pages of quotations and things from these books that I'd be happy to share in all sorts of different subjects. So feel free to reach out to me for that. I love hearing from you and responding to you. So thank you again, and I will see you in the next video.
Don't worry, I've got a lot more content for you to enjoy. Click the link to the right to see a video that goes hand in hand with what you just watched. On the left is a playlist I recommend you check out. And down below, you can see my latest video release. Your support means the world to me, so thank you.